Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So I'll get into the process that we're going through. So we are going that route where it's Charter has kind of come up with this what seems to be kind of a quasi standard recommendation for replacing old encoders or in some cases modulators with a blonder tongue product, which are called Drake Peg Plus encoders. So this is my rack right now. You can see that's the old encoder, the harmonic there, and then there's a fiber box there as well. So this is kind of this is the old school setup that we're transitioning out of. But the solution that Charter is proposing are these Drake units on the right here. Retail for $19.50 on MarkerTech. As you heard David talk about, they have a composite input on the back. They also have SDI, which he's now utilizing. Charter's requiring one encoder per channel, and it still outputs to that same fiber box. And I think to Will's point from the last talk we just had, the guy who's managing this project for me, his name is Doug, and he's based out of Texas. The techs who show up are from Wisconsin, and they literally, when they showed up to install these, they were like, we're told to come here, and we don't really know what we're doing here. So that was a fun day. Here's just a front back view, so you can see, like, compared to what our old solution was, and all the wires and the stripped down audio and whatnot. These are a little bit more plug and play, a little bit easier to manage from a hardware standpoint. And so this is anecdotal to Oshkosh. I don't know the conversations you perhaps have had with Charter, or if this is any different for you, but this is what happened to us. So we went round and round, and I was, kind of pulling the, I'm stupid, please educate me. Can you please give me HD for free? What is it going to take? And eventually what we got to was they sent me two different proposals. One was there's a one-time cost associated with the gear. You buy it, and our guys will install it. And you can be an SD, and we won't charge you, and things just kind of won't change. It'll just be upgraded transmission gear. The HD thing that they wanted to propose, or that they did propose, was for our two channels, is about almost $1,300 a month, and that would give us two dedicated 20 meg Ethernet, basically private lines, a dedicated Ethernet line, which is similar to like a business or an enterprise internet account. Basically, we would have our dedicated line that would come to us, and they would be charging us essentially like a business to have that dedicated line. So obviously, cost prohibitive. $1,300 a month was not something that we had budgeted for, or that was kind of in the realm of even kicking around. So we wound up agreeing to the one-time cost and moved forward in the SD, and the cost of this project for us is $9,300, and that includes the hardware and the install and all that good stuff. So this is just a timeline of what we went through. You'll see a lot of this will take 72 hours. I'll point this one out. The 72-hour soak test took like 2 weeks to eventually complete. Let me see if I've got. I didn't bring. This is an older version of this. There's a chart that's like an Excel spreadsheet. There's like 15 different steps that they have to go through. There's like 6 different teams from Charter you're working with, everything from engineering to video to network. It was almost funny. Doug sent me an email every week telling me that the interconnectivity tests were pending. I don't know what their interconnectivity test entails, but I mean, that process took November to March. Interconnectivity. What does that mean? I have absolutely no idea. But it gives you an idea for, if you go this route, just be prepared to have limited contact and foot dragging, and it's going to take some time. So these were some of the folks that I talked to when I was kind of putting this together. New London's channel is down right now. They purchased kind of an off-the-shelf encoder to get their channel back up. In the meantime, they are in the process of hiring a new media person there. Josh Fisty has just left. But they are reaching out to Charter to kind of get this process going as well. I know Rice Lake had an outage that they kind of band-aided over. Charter has not been responsive to them. Marshfield, I think, might have been the first center that actually got through this and went through it when they changed to their new building. They went from kind of across the parking lot to their new city building. And they were kind of one of the first, and you heard David talk about it. They were kind of one of the first ones to get through this process and kind of complete this. Alan talked about his solution in Janesville, and I know Whitewater has had some issues as well. So I can bring Mary up to go through this a little bit more. I guess what I would say is, if you can work like Jeff did with your local folks and find a solution, that's the best way to go. Once you enter the charter enterprise world, you get handed off to people from Texas and Columbus, Ohio was the place where I had to call and ask for them to put a slate up when we had a channel outage. It's just, once you get into their enterprise world, the communication becomes sparse and the progress becomes very slow. So if you can get your local techs to get a relationship with them and really rely on them and make them your first point of contact, that is the best way to go. Because once Mike or some of the government affairs folks get involved and you just go up the ladder to enterprise, it's a whole different world. And in my experience, the local techs are much more helpful. They're much more common sense. Like, well, yeah, we can do that. Why wouldn't we do that? They don't play in the political sphere of, well, no, we don't do that for PEG channel, so we can't do it for you. It's just, it's broken, let's fix it. I think that's their general nature. So if I could leave you with one piece of advice, if you're having tech issues, contact your local folks, and there's a slide at the end of this presentation with some good points of contact in the state if you need those folks.
Did you start with like Bill, though? Was that the first thing to reach out to you and say, hey, we got a deal for you? And
right.
And that started it?
Yes. That Mike went, when we had that harmonic encoder that I showed you, that's the second one of those we had. We had a channel outage Labor Day of 2021 that was only supposed to last a couple of days, and it lasted a month. And we were just about set to implement this Drake solution in an emergency way. And then some tech in Fond du Lac who was CC'd on an email chain just piped up and said, I've got one of these down here in Fond du Lac that's a spare. It's just sitting here in this room. He came up. He installed it himself. I said, I didn't want to step on any toes. I don't want, I know there's a chain of command here. Are you sure it's okay if you come? He's like, what are they going to do? So in some ways, like that disconnect that Will talked about from the enterprise folks and the admin folks and the techs on the ground is 100% real. Because like I said, we finally got the actual physical install of those units scheduled, and the two techs who are obviously local showed up, and they were like, we have some boxes and they're supposed to plug in somewhere, and we don't really know. I mean, I could hear them in our master control on the phone with their help desk or whoever, and they were just kind of like, what is it we're doing here? Where are we supposed to go? Where is the fiber? And it's all their stuff. They've been there multiple times for site visits, photos were taken, emails were sent, and then the guys they send over to do the job are like, what are we doing here? So as much as we would like to believe that Charter is this highly organized, efficient beast of an organization, there is an absolute disconnect from the folks who are telling us no to the folks who actually wind up doing the work and putting the gear in. And those folks who put the gear in, if you can work through them and not escalate things, they wind up being much more receptive and much more helpful.
And did they make you sign any documents? So when they sent it to us, I did the same thing. I argued with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Mike, why the hell would I want to pay for HD when you should just give it? And they ended up sending me a bunch of documents like, you have to sign this before we're going to even do anything. I'm like, I'm not signing crap until you tell me what I'm signing. And that's where we're going on 5 months since that.
Yeah. We had a similar thing happen, Jeremy, where it took months because I told them, you're charging me $9,300, but you won't give me an itemized invoice. You kept giving me a scope of work statement. But the invoice was just $4,500 and, $2,900 or whatever the math was. And it was like, you don't, like, the procurement process at the municipal level, at least in the state of Wisconsin, I can't give them a bill written on a napkin for $9,300 and say, hey, my P card limit's $500. You guys want to go ahead and cut a rec for this? Like,
that's why we couldn't sign the document.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't tell me what the document is that I'm agreeing to give up rights to everything, or what am I doing here?
Yeah, but
So, I want to just kind of pose an idea, and tell me if this is like really stupid, Mary. Okay.
I'll be happy to.
Okay. So what you're describing when the FCC articulated this process in the 2019 order on franchising, was that there would be a request from the cable provider to modify a franchise at the local or state level, and that the LFA would have, I think that's 45 days or 30 days to respond to the charges that would be brought back against franchise fees. Not that there would be a company that would be promoting sales of their enterprise services for transmission. Now, we always thought that, like, and I'm pretty sure that after the Sixth Circuit order, Charter realized that they couldn't push this, they couldn't push their business plan down the throats of locals without some subterfuge. That's not fair. They went on a different plan rather than modifying the agreements with the state or local authorities. They said, we're just going to sell you something, and we're going to have you agree to pay us. There's nothing illegal about that, but it's not what the FCC authorized.
Hold all those thoughts, because I'm going to be wrestling with some of that FCC stuff, and maybe you can bring that in. That's something I did not deal with, but could you bring that into a
Sure, okay.
more
So you don't have to tell me I'm stupid yet.
One other thing. No.
But I think the thing that's curious about this is a couple things. One, if someone said I was going to modify the agreement and I would take the franchise fee back at cost, the marginal cost for that business line, that's not the $600 a month for the business line. That sort of stuff. I would,
Let's bring that in.
One other thing on the tech side before we move on to the law side is I wanted to bring up too, because David mentioned that he kind of, I've flipped the switch and it's HD now, my bad. When we were going through the soak test, the 72-hour soak test that took 2 weeks, I was outputting a certain frame rate, and they said that the Drake encoder was seeing in a different frame rate. So the tech actually asked me, could you please change that 480i 2997 stream to a 1080i input? Absolutely, I can. Oh, great, because the Drake can down convert that. And I thought, so, like, admitting, it's been funny. I've only been a part of this organization for, like 5 or 6 years, but it's funny because Charter's kind of explanation has gone from, well, your old gear can't do that, to, yeah, we can do it, we just don't want to. And now it's evolved to, well, if you guys paid us, we could swallow that. So it's interesting how it's kind of evolved from, it's just a technical impossibility, to it's an inconvenience, to, oh, this is a potential revenue stream. So yes, it's interesting. So they are actively down converting our signal, which is one thing we always had to do. We always had to run it through Black Magic, SDI, strip it down to analog, all that good stuff. We don't have to do that anymore. I have a straight HD SDI connection to their equipment, and they, in my opinion, once it hits, that input, then it's them that's, down converting us. They're not asking us to give them a particular signal because that's what their equipment requires. They're taking my signal as is, and now they are down converting it. So that's another interesting development. It's kind of flipped the way that we have done it in the past.
Is that something the legislature knows? Or something they probably don't care, but, if you're giving them a signal, then they're changing it.
I don't know how many other stations have been required to do that, or would be required to do that. So it certainly is another kind of feather in the cap to say, for them to say to you, our equipment needs this signal. They give you the specs, and you as the content creator, whatever you want to call. Then you say, okay, in order to play nice with this equipment, I have to give you this signal. When they say, we can take whatever signal you give us, but we are going to change it. That is a whole different dynamic now. They're actively, deteriorating the signal. Degrading, yes. I don't know that they've ever necessarily done that themselves. I think they've always said to us, no, we can't take 1080i. You have to give us 480i. Or if you're AT&T, it's
480 by 480.
Windows Media. Yes. So good luck finding an encoder that does that. Anyway, so that's enough for me. Happy to chat more about how this process is going in Oshkosh. The 72-hour soak test is done. We are now in the channel building phase, which feels, yeah. This would be a perfect episode of Seinfeld. I swear to God, it would be. That's a great question, Mike. That's a great question.
No, they completely, we've given them the signal, they've received the signal out there, and it worked through all the equipment. So they've done this 72-hour nonstop test. Now on top of it, now they're like, oh, well, in the hands of our technicians to basically input it into their system. And that's where we're at. I mean, the hardest thing for us, and it's March 2nd is when we receive that information, and every 2 weeks we receive no new update kind of thing, email every 2 weeks. But for us, it's like we couldn't get the signal dumbed down to the quality that they wanted, to the point where, I had a scan converter, and I'm like converting it to every possibility. No, they want it like 480i, 29.97 frames per second, and I couldn't find a scanner to take it down to that level. I could get close, but I couldn't get all the way down there. When they did our soak test, it was at 720. So we had to do the soak test on HD because I could not dumb it down. I could get it down to 480, but I couldn't get it below 59.97 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't get down there. And then I asked them, I go, what equipment should I buy? And of course they'll say, we can't recommend what you should purchase. I said, well, can you give me an example of one successful implementation of this? Put me in touch with that TV channel that did it. Never heard a peep from them.
The same thing happened to me. It was frame rate for us too, and eventually that's when they were like, yeah, just put it in there in HD, and then we'll do it. Okay, sounds good. So, yep, yeah.
Okay, so this was actually kind of a learning experience even for me doing this. What I did in this PowerPoint is I put the actual language in the statute below, but I'm not going to be reading that, but it's there just so you know what I'm referencing. So first of all, there is no minimum standard of quality a video service provider must meet in Wisconsin law. It just must be sufficient. And there we go. Oh. Okay. Video service providers can transmit PEG channels any way they want to. They are under no legal obligation to provide PEG channels in HD. This is according to Wisconsin statute. Municipalities must provide a PEG channel signal that is compatible with how the video service provider chooses to transmit it. So it sort of goes back to what we were just talking about. I mean, it has to be compatible. If you read the language, in a manner and form that is capable of being accepted and transmitted by the provider without changing the content or transmission signal, and that is compatible with the technology or protocol utilized by the provider to, so what's interesting is you could probably, I think we should make the argument that if they can accept this signal, then why aren't they playing it on the channel? It's not like it's incompatible. It certainly is. We've shown that. So it might be something to try with the state. But municipalities bear the burden of finding compatible equipment, and municipalities must pay for that transmission equipment. So if that means finding a modulator that's 20 years old to replace a 20-year-old modulator, it's our burden. Video service providers are required to connect to the PEG channel origination points in existence in 2008. I would argue that sufficient means video service providers must at least maintain those connections. So if you have not moved an origination point and they say something needs to be upgraded at that original origination point, you should not be paying for that. Because to my mind, that's maintenance of an original line. If you haven't moved it, you shouldn't be paying anything for any kind of work on that line. a video service provider can collect a fee for transmission from subscribers. This is what state law says. It doesn't say they can collect a fee from municipalities for transmission. That's what state law says. I'm getting to Fed. What?
Practice on local bills that,
No,
so none of the state providers are actually
doing that.
creating a.
No. No. But the way the statute reads is they can collect a fee for transmission from subscribers. It does not say they can collect it from municipalities as a separate line on a bill. So, so when they say to you, we'll give you HD for so much per month, and the municipality is supposed to pay for that, is that against the statute? Because it says if you want to charge for transmission, then you have to go to the subscribers for that. I mean, that's to me what that says. But on the other hand, well, let's see where my slides take us. Yeah. So again, if a municipality wants to move an origination point or add one, then you're paying for the construction costs. That's in our statute. But municipalities are not to pay for the cost of transmission. Now, this is different from what the FCC came down on, and also you have to keep in mind that, the problem I'm having with this and why I want to talk to DFI is that Charter might say, we're happy to transmit you an SD, and that's all we're required to do. But if you want HD, that's above and beyond what we're required to do in law, then we're going to charge you. So how does that comport with they're not supposed to charge us for transmission? I don't know. So in 2019, the FCC decided that franchising authorities could assess a maximum of 5% on video service provider gross revenues, including, for the first time, non-cash exactions. So that means... so that included origination line maintenance and PEG transport by a video service provider. So video service providers can deduct the marginal cost of providing maintenance and transport from the maximum 5% franchise fee allowed by federal law. However, the top VSP fee in Wisconsin is 4%. So even if they charged us the marginal cost of transport, it would have to be 1% or greater in cost before they could really charge us according to federal law. Yeah.
So, yes, but the process would be they would go to the state as the franchise authority and ask to modify. But that's literally what the FCC said, right?
In order to charge this, is what you're saying. In order to charge for transport, they would have to ask for a modification?
Right, a modification of the agreement. That was the framework that they promoted.
Okay.
Now, they didn't say the company can go out and sell services to people who will agree to it. Right?
Because okay, well that's very interesting. So that's on top of the fact that Wisconsin law currently says you can't charge municipalities for transmission. And now you're saying that the only way they could charge for transmission is if they sought a change in the statute, because that's what the agreement is in Wisconsin.
Right. They would seek change with the local franchising authority, which is in this case is the state of Wisconsin.
Right.
There's nothing in the FCC order that says they can't go ahead and sell a service to somebody who agrees to sign the paperwork and pay them money.
That's always true.
Right.
I mean, and I'm trying to educate my people so that they don't do that. Because I don't think charter, one way or the other, can do that.
So my idiotic question is, could a municipality ask to modify?
They don't have standing as a franchising authority.
Could the state ask to modify the agreement?
They would listen.
So,
Because it's, right? I'm just trying to wrap my head around that.
I am too.
You
So,
know.
but where would we be ahead on that? Because, but what's the point? Because they're not going to charge us. They can't charge us anything because it's never going to be more than 5%. What they do, their marginal cost is never going to go above 5.
But the only way that occurs is if there's a modification of the agreement. So you need to have somebody saying that the agreements have to be modified for those transmission costs rather than you promoting these sales.
So what you're saying is,
And I'm not sure, the only thing I'm not sure about is who is that authority? Is that DFI? Is that the FCC? Because there's a practice that's happening across the country. I'm in deep water at this point as I'm kind of.
yeah, I am
so,
too.
So that's the only question I've got is that ruling affects every ruling affects every state regardless of what their laws are.
Right. So
And regardless of whether or not they're a state franchise or a local franchise.
So bottom line, what you're saying is, this is true, but in order for this to be true, they have to come to the state and ask to do this.
Correct. It has to be a franchise modification.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not the process that they're doing as they're promoting their business services.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't have an answer, but that's the conundrum.
I'm not sure, yeah,
Just to clarify, is this the same conversation as you are responsible for buying the transmission equipment? So whether it's HD, SD, whatever, the station has to buy whatever it is to meet whatever said company is taking the signal in. So isn't it the same thing?
would this include, is this just the operation of the transport?
It's just the operation of the transport.
It's not the equipment itself?
So the problem that Wisconsin has is because you eliminated PEG fees, that's the source of capital. That would be an allowable capital cost that could be recovered,
Right,
right, through a PEG fee.
right.
And that's what we see in other states that have PEG fees. Because it was eliminated in the state law, you don't have that recourse.
But really, I think the problem that I see, I don't think people balk too much at buying a piece of equipment because it's a one-time cost, capital
Yep.
budget, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
What they're worried about is the operating costs, and some of these installation and construction costs for the lines
Yeah.
are very, very prohibitive.
Yeah, and what the main communities are seeing is that there already are lines into buildings and that they're being charged for extra lines that they don't need. So they're already in a municipal building, or they're in a library, and there's already a business class service that they can connect to, and they're being forced to buy an extra line and pay for the construction at a crazy
This is charter
price.
then?
Or alternatively, they're being told they can't buy the box on the open market,
Oh, we get that too,
right? Even though it's a commercially available box,
yeah.
right?
I think you were told that, right, in Oshkosh? Yeah, they had to buy from Charter because they had to set it up in some special way or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So,
They just sprinkle the magic.
right,
right.
right.
Huh.
But yeah, I mean, even at that point, I think you'd be looking at cost recovery.
Well, the other
Right?
thing is,
I
we
mean-
need to emphasize to them that this is marginal cost that they're allowed to do.
Correct.
They can't be charging you a business line charge for a line.
Right, but who's the cop on the beat for that? That's my question.
Oh, it's DFI,
It's DFI.
yeah. But like I said earlier today, they just found out a few weeks ago that, oh, really? We're regulating that?
And the only,
I guess that's my bad.
And
I'm having to go back.
I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet. The thing is, that's curious is that this very question is coming up with the California PUC. As they're looking at their video franchising, they passed a law in California to authorize the PUC to have a rulemaking about consumer standards for video.
See, what I'm thinking is, since we can't get anywhere with the legislature, I wanted to really kind of go after DFI and get them to like think about this and
Yeah.
what does our law really mean, and see if we can eke out any protections for us somehow here. You know, between the FCC, between the language that says they can't charge municipalities for transmission, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, see what we can kind of dislodge just with what we have.
And to what extent are they an independent agency, or are they subject to the directions of the governor?
Well, we've got a Democratic governor.
But are they an independent? I mean, the California PUC is an independent agency.
Oh, it's not independent. It's a
DFI is.
It's a department.
Is an administrative department.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, this is sort of off topic, but I do get questions about this, so I thought I'd put it in. So if TDS comes in, or Select comes in, or whatever, any overbuilder, they have to provide the same number of PEG channels that the legacy provider had been providing. They have to provide those PEG channels immediately or within 90 days of receiving notice from a municipality. And there's all this language in the law about notice, who has to give notice, blah, blah, blah. But basically, it's either right when they start service or within 90 days of receiving notice from you. And then let's say some other video provider comes in and they want to connect somehow with the existing provider to get the PEG channels. They're supposed to negotiate in good faith with that new provider. So if Charter says, no, we're not giving you any access, well, that's kind of against the law. They're supposed to be working with those people. Okay. There are some helpful and not so helpful people.
That's going to be uploaded to.
Yeah, we will. We will. You got something more here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, Jeremy brought up Mike Hill. He's the director of government affairs for the state. If you get escalated to him, that's where your progress will eventually slow to. Yeah. These other three guys are people that Tom gave me a couple of these and had a couple duplications, but Paul Holman is the guy that I referenced from Fond du Lac. He's the one who was like, oh, I have one of those. I'll just come give it to you. And he came up and did it himself and, he wasn't really concerned about what was going on up the ladder. But Paul Davis, sales engineer out of Madison. Paul Holman is an ISP engineer out of Fond du Lac. And then Dan McQuain is somebody that Tom has worked with, and he's out of Onalaska. So depending on where you're at in the state, those are some potential points of contact where if you want to go the local tech route, if you're having issues and you're not getting any emails back from the government affairs folks, these guys are they're responsive people. They will actually reply and say what's going on, and depending on how you word your questions and how deep you want to go into it, they will attempt to assist you without escalating it. It's sad that we have to try and do that dance, but the reality of it is when your channel goes down, you just want it back up. You don't want to have to contact enterprise or government affairs and explain the issue and do all that. So if you need a quick fix or someone to give you tech help, those bottom three people have been very helpful.
I just want to mention that on the member homepage, under VSP contacts, we put these sorts of things. So I don't know if it's up to date with all of this, but you can look there to get the contact information.
Yeah, I pulled a lot of these from there. There are many more, and they're from all different parts of the state. So if there's someone who's more local to you that you would like to go with, but their email, their phone numbers, and their location, which is sometimes important depending on what you need, are all on there, and they've all been dropped there by a member, someone who's had contact with these people. So.
Did you have to purchase equipment for their head-ins?
No.
Okay.
No, we didn't. But the other thing that I will say too, and I'll just wrap this up by saying, the invoice that we got was problematic. It was not itemized. There wasn't even a way for me to prove to our purchasing department that they didn't charge us tax. They wouldn't even put a line on there that says tax $0. So I'm like, guys, I don't know if I can even pay this or submit this because I have to be able to prove that I paid no tax. My purchasing department is just going to dismiss this out of hand and tell me to go back. So that's going to be, I'm glad that the gear install is happening before they sent me the bill. Because I feel like that's going to be a song and dance that's going to be like part 2 of this saga is going to be the eventual payment process.
Well, I hate to tell you, back in the 80s, they're charging people $7 a month to rent a remote control,
Yeah.
until Congress passed the law. No, you can't gouge people like that. I mean, geez.
So, so then the scenario that you've got is you go through the soak test, you go through the channel building. There might be like a, I don't know, thumbnail extraction at some point. You'll have the Drake box installed. Will you be doing the HD transmission? Will viewers be able to see an HD channel in Oshkosh?
On Charter?
On Charter?
No.
Okay. So you're not paying the transmission.
I am not
you're not
paying-
paying the transmission.
I am not paying the roughly $1,300 a month that they asked us for to transmit in HD
For all your channels.
for both channels.
For both channels.
Yes, $1,300 a month for both channels.
1,300. Is that? Was that like a? It's interesting. When did they give that to you?
March of last year, perhaps. It's for a 20 meg EVPL, like a dedicated line. That's what they say they're charging. So essentially, they're trying to charge us for like business class dedicated line internet.
Yeah,
is
and then,
what-
and then what ends up happening is that you get paid. You have to pay state tax on that, and then also there's a cost recovery to the FCC for Universal Service Fund. So about $130 a month, $130 per channel component goes back to other authorities for their help.
I'll leave you with
which
this.
is clearly
Yeah.
not the FCC's intent.
I'll leave you with the sunny notion that I got from our assistant city attorney when he said the cable companies are like the railroads back in the day. They have more money than you, they have more lawyers than you, and they will convince you that what they're doing is both legal and convenient for you unless you actually ask the questions and refuse to do it. And so don't let them sucker you into just pay us this and we'll fix all your problems. Like, we're still working on this, and the organization is going to continue to look into this. So, and if you have questions for folks who have gone through it, Tom in Marshfield, they have kind of come out on the other side of it, obviously, and David too talked about it. We're in the middle of it. Alan's in the middle of it. So if you need perspectives or you're just not comfortable moving forward or where you're at in your process, just reach out to some of us because we're either going through it or have been through it. So.
We're glad to support
Jeff.
This has nothing to do with HD, but it's about Charter. We were looking to add a channel last year, and Charter said that, fine, we love what you're doing as a public access channel. You're doing a great job. You got lots of programming. We're going to charge you $545 a month for the extra channel. And that was not even in HD. That was just an extra SD channel.
Yeah.
And TDS said, sure, you want another channel? You got it. No charges whatsoever.
Jeff, did you get that in writing from them?
Not, oh yeah, I do actually have a little graph they sent me. Yeah.
Would you be willing to share that?
Sure.
It's great. The reason I'm asking is because a lot of this stuff gets transmitted orally,
Yes.
and no one ever asked for written proposal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're not consistent as far as price.
That's exactly correct. And there needs to be. We need to be documenting this
And
systematically.
putting these stories on video, if nothing else. And in fact, there's an emotional component to this
Sure.
that I think could really be effective because people are frustrated. And maybe putting some of these stories on video is a thought.
I know there are some people who, in the previous discussion, they're like, we don't really have an appetite for this. I've heard some members go as far as to say when our equipment dies that sends our signal to Charter, we're just not going to send our signal to Charter anymore.
I'll be talking about that at lunch.
Yeah. And, I don't fall into that group. I don't fault anybody for their personal opinion, but I will say when our channel goes down, we still get phone calls, a lot of them. And that's what happened when we did the soak test and all this other stuff where we had channel outages. Folks in Oshkosh, I can only speak for us, they're still calling us. So there's still a desire for that in the community. Not every community is the same, but where we are at, people still have that expectation that they can find us on Charter.
There's a certain audience, an audience that is not into digital, and there are still a lot of those people around.
But the flip side is, and why two of us put up our hands and says it's not worth the fight, is if they continue to have their way, as they continue to have their way, eventually it will all go away,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's survive and move on. You can hang on to all of this and keep fighting it, but stations should fight for their funding on their local level with their local people and fight that fight. I couldn't fight this cable with the numbers I just got, and I showed that to we would shut down the cable channel tomorrow. They wouldn't buy into that. They would say, why would I?
More numbers. You're
Right,
32
we're
or
a
something.
station that was losing money in a community that was building like crazy, and we had to jump ship. So at the end of the day, I would pose the question to everybody, what happens when the cable goes away? Do you go away or do you not? Because you shouldn't go away. You should be fighting a different fight of finding your funding and finding your niche to the market, period. The outside of this cable, HD, whatever, you're doing it in HD and you're putting it out there with the resources that you got. I mean, we're having this fight with the local newspaper that council thought that was the only way the city communicated. And we're like, that's one sliver of a big way of communicating.
Were you gonna say something?
I guess I'm behind the pole here, but.
Metaphorically?
Over here. My concern is the public access piece, which isn't real as strong here in Wisconsin, will be gone.
It was gone when YouTube showed up.
But it's still, no, it isn't gone. It really depends on your audience and how you use that stuff. I don't think it's gone at all. It's actually growing in our area on cable. Tell me why? Because we're finding audiences and showing, we're looking at it a different way. We're here for them, and they look at it as an asset. It doesn't cost, we're not charging them, and they're getting the best of both worlds. And that's where I look at it, and that's the public access piece of it. They already, look at it. COVID helped us a ton in the church world.
Sorry, I was thinking
Marshfield.
like access, like people coming to create content. Providing access to the community was the selling point and why the mayor bought into the whole.
You guys personally.
Right.
But there's another side to it.
There is, and I think that's the YouTube side.
But maybe in where you live, but not in these older communities, we're over 55% penetration in cable, or 50. So I can't say that. And our phones are ringing like Oshkosh. If we don't have something on, I don't even want to think about it. You can't get in the door, and it's not one call, it's 2, 3, 5. That's good. So that tells you I can't turn that off.
Yeah, I think it's dying as bad as cable is dying. I mean, you better have something at the end to find your way to go that next direction.
Which we always have, which we have.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. I'm just saying, I feel like a lot of people have held on to the notion that this HD or something's going to solidify at the state. It's over.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, I saw a big decline when I was at Maddow, about the same time that Mini DV came out, and then all of a sudden non-linear, and prices started to drop on consumer equipment, and quality went way up, and that's why people started, like I said, doing things on your own, putting it on YouTube, and by 2010, I did all the reports. The numbers were like this from about the third year after I was there, because it was just a dying model, and the people that were left at Maddow when I left, which was just 2 years before they closed, were people that could not do it on their own. They needed staff assistance, and my position was, hey, we need to train these people so they can do it on their own, because we're not going to be around forever, which we were.
And if the people really want it, then the people have to step up and ask for it at this point. We've advocated again and again and again and again. Where are the people? Where are the residents? Where are they to come in and say, hey, I need to keep this? Then pony up, right?
Well, and I think that just
We got to wrap up.
Yeah, just have the last word. I mean, that's kind of part of what we're trying to do here is let's get our message out there to the public. Let them know that public access still exists, that these channels are still there, and that if you care about this, that you need to speak up. And if we can do that last effort, at this point, maybe we can harness some change. But there's a certain point where we do have to say we're going to move on. But I don't know if we want to move on without really giving it a good college try.
Okay, and with that, we are going to move on. So thank you, everybody, and take the survey for the workshops.
What you started to say.
Survey, take the